Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Resume. We are discussing resume. Communication for employment is a process, as we discussed last time. And in the last lecture, we discussed different aspects of resume. I told you in the beginning of the last lecture that this type of communication is a process. It's a complete package. It starts from career planning, and you must have noticed that how in detail we discuss career planning. Then comes the next step of this employment communication, preparing resume. After resume, we will discuss preparing cover letter that you send with the resume. Then comes understanding interview process, then preparing for the interview, then sitting in the interview. How do you sit in it? What are the requisites to sit in it? And then the follow-up letter, the acceptance tester. That is the last of the this whole package. In the previous lecture, we discussed career planning and some aspect of resume, that how do we write resume. We were probably discussing one type of resume that is known as chronological resume. Chronological resume is the type of resume that gives a historical picture of your experience, work experience, and your education in the beginning. This is very good type of resume for those who have a long history of employment. I mean, they can give the history of their employment in the forefront of their resume, and the employer can know about you by just starting the resume or looking at a glance of the to your resume. So this we discuss how do we narrate experience in this chronological resume, and what are its advantages. It's easy because employer can read all these things in a glance, and then it's easier because it's highlight your growth. We start from the present to the past. So what are you doing now, and from where you started. It actually tells the reader the growth that you have made in your career. So in one way or the other, it gives continuity and stability to the employer of your employment. So this type of resume can be very helpful for people who have a long employment history and won't tell about themselves. I mean that just with your name, with your objective that we will soon be discussing, and then you start with this main part which tells your employment history, from where you started and what are you now. So as I just said, this can be helpful in one way or the other to the employer. So let's look at how do we list our employment history, different aspect of our employment history. Z Corporation. Prepare accounting reports for wholesale gift financial transactions with foreign suppliers. Created a computerized model to adjust account for fluctuation in currency. Implemented electronic funds transfer for vendor disbursement, improving cash flow and eliminating taxation. So whoever is reading a resume will find that the history of the employee, prospective employee, is in the beginning. As we've discussed that your resume may find less than a minute for reading. So for that matter, you have to picture yourself in such a way that at a glance the readers know that what you are and what you have done. So this, as I just said, can be helpful in one way or the other, because employer want those people who have in certain situation who have long stable employment history. Second to this chronological resume, we have functional resume. We call it functional in this way that it differs from the chronological resume in this way that it just lists skills and accomplishment of you in the beginning. I mean, instead of telling your employer, your prospective employer, your employment history, you just start with the skills and the accomplishment that you have made. This type of resume is very helpful for those people who are just embarking on the career. They haven't had any previous history, so this can be very helpful. After you have graduated from school or university, you will like to write your resume in this manner, in which you will like to highlight the skills and accomplishment that you have made. As I just said you, that never think that you don't have any experience for any job. Nobody has it when one starts any new job, but there are certain things, certain aspects of your previous life, the life that you spent at school, in college, at university, in which you did a lot of things. So these are in such cases where you don't have any employment history, in these things can be very helpful. These are basically your main experience. So here you are going to tell the employer about your skills that you have developed during your education, and the accomplishment that you have made, you have achieved during your academic career. So never think that anyway you are less than any other competitor. Always think that you have something to offer to your employer. Maybe the training that you have received is of relevant field for which you are applying. So this type of resume gives individual areas of competence. Like chronological resume, this resume too has some advantages. Without having to read through job description, employer can see what you can do for them. So it has one edge. Obviously, all the employers are looking for some people who suit their requirements. So in the beginning of your resume, the employer can know your skills, your achievements, and what you have to offer him. Then you can emphasize earlier job experience. Another thing is that you can de-emphasize any lack of career progression. I mean, by just starting with your skills, you can just skip all those things which can refer to any previous career path. So this is a very helpful type of communication for those who are just starting their career and they don't have any, or they have less job experience. Besides, in some cases, others may like to use this type of resume, especially in those cases if you have a very long employment history. So you start with the skill. Let's take a look at the functional resume. Relevant skills: personal selling, retailing, led houseware department in employee sales for spring 2006, created shelf displays for special housewares promotion, sold the most benefit tickets during college fundraising drive for local community center. Public interaction is very important. If you include this segment into your resume, it tells your employer, the prospective employer, that you can get along with people. That is a very prized quality of an employee, that employer are always looking for, because it tells that a person has the ability to make the teams, to manage teams, to become a part of a team. So public interaction, you see that what type of your experience is being included in this segment. Public interaction, commanded by housewares manager for resolving customer complaints amicably, was captain of college 11 and participated in many university fixtures, managing training part-time housewares employees in cash register operation and customer service, reworked housewares employee schedules as assistant manager, organized summer activities for children 6 to 12 years old for city of Karachi, including reading programs, sports activities, etc. So this was an example of functional resume. So you can see that this functional resume is very helpful for those who are just embarking on their career, starting any new job. They don't have any previous long job experience, so they can tell the employer about the skills that they have developed during their academic career or the achievements they have made. So you see that how do we write these types of resume? It has something about the skills we develop, and it also tells some of our experience regarding some activities that we might have carried out during their academic career. So sometimes it happens that we combine these two resume. We combine chronological resume and functional resume, and we make a combination of the two. This combination resume includes the best features of the two. I mean, it has the skills and the achievements, and it has the job experience combined together. Especially it is helpful for those who want to tell the employer that they have certain skills, certain accomplishment, and they have a job experience. But this has some disadvantages. It is very long, very longer than any of the two resumes, and repetitious. One aspect is that it repeats things again and again. First you bring it into the first section and then into other separately when you are discussing different things. So this can be helpful in some way. The person who is to write this thing has to handle this type of resume very carefully. Let's look at an example of this, that how it goes. Skills and capabilities. For example, we start with skills and capabilities. This is a combination of the two resume. This is a combination resume. Plan and coordinate large-scale public events. Develop community support for concerts, festivals, and the arts. Manage publicity for major events. Coordinate activities for diverse community groups. Establish and maintain financial control for public events. Negotiate contract with performers, carpenters, electricians, and suppliers. So if you look at this chunk of the combination resume, you'll find that it just combines the skills and capabilities of a person, and it helps the person in giving his picture to the employer that what he can do, what he has to offer the employer. So this type of resume can be helpful in certain instances. Remember that when you are writing your resume, you have to use very simple and direct style. All the verbs that you are going to use in your resume must be very forceful. They should tell about your action. They shouldn't give anything in abstraction. I mean, instead of using nouns, you should use verbs. Instead of saying a development, you should use develop, and we'll just show you some words, that which words should be used and how they should be used. So whenever you are writing resume, use a very direct style, direct approach. Though this resume or this employment communication is persuasive in nature, but we use, especially in our resumes, a very direct style, and the type of the sentence that we use is very short. They are very short, crispy phrases. Instead of whole sentence, we use phrases. Especially if you write, when you are telling about yourself that you planned a certain project, instead of writing the whole sentence, we start with planned. Instead of writing, I participated in these fixture, we simply start with participated in these fixture. As you must have noticed when I was reading some pieces of chronological resume and functional resume, you must have noticed that we started from the verbs, not from the subject or the whole sentence or the beginning of the sentence. So whenever you are writing, you got to be direct. This is what we call direct style. So sentences are short and crispy sentences. We are using phrases. Phrases mean from the predicate phrases being used more often in resume than the whole sentence. So avoid using certain words when you are dealing with your resume. Instead of, as I just said, instead of using accomplishments, say accomplished. Use verb. Instead of saying achievements, use achieved. Instead of saying developments, use develop. So there is a list of verbs that is used when we are writing resume. So let's have a look at it, that when we use verb and when we don't use verb, what do the statements or the sentences that we make look like? Responsible for developing a new branch. So this is a very weak sentence. Responsible for developing a new branch. You have a verb in it. In development, you have a verb. So use the verb. Instead of responsible for developing a new branch, say developed a new branch. So I was in charge of customer complaint. Instead of I was in charge of customer complaint, maybe this sounds a little more effective to you, but in reality, if you use a verb instead of a noun, this will give you more of your picture to the employer than you think. So use it. Handled customer complaints. So this sentence, handled customer complaints, gives more of yourself to your employer. So won a cash prize of 100,000 for opening the most new customer accounts in my department. Similarly, generated the highest number of new customer accounts in my department. So you see that these two sentences give a different effect. You start from the action that you have performed or you have done, and this gives a better picture to your employer. Use always active statements that show results. So beside telling your employer about your work experience or skills or anything, you also include a lot of other things into your resume. In addition to your accomplishment, you include your name, your address, your academic credentials, employment history, activities and achievements, and relevant personal data. All this is informed. So you begin your resume with your name and your address. Normally resume has this part in the beginning. Since we use a blank sheet for resumes, so we write at the top of the page name and address of ourselves, so that the employer may know. This is what he needs to know. We want that employer should know that whose resume is this. So we start with the name. We tell that who we are and where you can be reached. So give your address. This is another important thing. You include your address, you include your phone number, you include your email address, any contact information. Sometimes we include both our residential and office addresses as well as phone numbers. In today's situation, our cell phone. So the first part of the resume is the name and address of the person of writing resume. Remember that you don't have to write the word resume at the top, because the way the information is formatted on the page shows the employer or the reader that this is a resume or this is a CV or this is a biodata, whatever we call it. Nowadays mostly we use resume for all these purposes. So we don't have to use this word resume at the top. Normally it is written by a lot of people, but avoid writing this at the top. Just make sure the reader can tell in an instant who you are and how to communicate with you. So it should have your name and your address. After your name and address, you write the career objective or summary of qualification. This is another information that you give to your employer about yourself. So far as this career objective or summary of qualification is concerned, there is disagreement among experts. Some of the experts think that there is no need to include this section into resume. Some are in favor of it. They want that you must tell the objective. So objective, this career objective, according to those who want it to be in the resume, serve the purpose of telling the employer that what you are looking for. So one thing is there, by writing career objective you become specific. I mean, you very specifically tell that which type of a job you are looking for. So if you for those who disagree with its inclusion in the resume, they say that this type of information in the resume just corner you or just limit you for one specific goal or one specific purpose. So it to be open, you need not include it. This can be included or excluded according to the according to your choice and your own perception of giving information in your resume. If you decide to state your objective, make effective by being as specific as possible about what you want. I mean, if you have included it, so be very clear about it. So let's have a look at it. A marketing position in a growing company requiring international education. So this is a career objective. This gives the reader at a glance what you are looking for, what you intend to find with him. So there can be a summary of qualification like this: 10 years of experience in international banking with track record. Career objective or summary of qualification may be the only section which is read fully by the employer. So it must be very strong, concise and very effective. So after this we have another section in our resume, that is education. Education is your strongest point, as if especially in that case when you don't have any experience, is your strongest point. So you have to explain your education in such a way that it attracts the attention of your employer. So present educational background in depth, choosing facts that support your theme. So give headings such as education, include any college training that you have had, any achievement, any academic achievement that you have had, any training, especially if this training is related to the job that you are seeking, explain it. So explain your qualification, your education so strongly, so effectively that it attracts the attention of your employer. You start from the highest to the bottom. I mean, you start, if you have a university education, you start from your university education, then college education, then your school education, the top school certificate that you have received. So you explain. Remember that you must mention the year when you passed a certain academic examination. So you must mention the year. In some cases, you are having some qualification, you are doing something. For example, like if you are doing this MBA program with the virtual university, but you are already working somewhere with some previous qualification. So if you are going to apply for any new job, mention that you are doing this education and this is incomplete. Do mention the likely date of its completion. So this inclusion can tell the employer that you are seeking for higher education and you have some higher goals in your life. If you have any award or certificate, do mention it. After that, you have to discuss about another section, which is your work experience, your accomplishment or your skill. Remember that you have to focus on the overall theme, that what theme you want to present to your employer. Show a relationship between your previous responsibility and your target field. I mean, the field that you want to embark on. Call attention to your skills that you have developed and your progression from job of lesser to greater responsibility. Describe your work experience. List your jobs in chronological order, all the work experience, whether you have a long employment history or a short employment history, or you are just a fresh from the college or university. In your work experience, if you have done any part-time job, even if unrelated, you must include it into your resume, because it's a very important qualification of you. It tells the employer that how versatile you are. I mean, what are your other areas? Remember that everything that you do does add something to your experience. It in fact enriches your experience. So never think that anything is not related to the job that you are applying for, and the employer might think it otherwise. It presents your whole picture. So the employer wants a complete man or a complete woman worker on the workplace. So be a complete employee. So present everything that you have to. Obviously, not anything that is negative. We have discussed and we will be discussing later on. So when you are telling about the work experience or your skill or your employment, this section should list all the things that you have, all the job related things that you have. So start from the name and location of the employer, the latest employer that you are working with, in case of having any previous job, what the organization does, your functional titles, and never glamorize your title. how long you worked, your duties and responsibilities, your significant achievements or contribution. For example, develop a new filing system that reduced paperwork by 50%. So you see that this is how you include your achievements, your work experience into your resume. Whether you are writing a chronological resume or you are writing a functional resume, when you are talking about your work experience, your skills, your achievement, this is how you are going to list your work experience or achievement into your resume. Sometimes you also include some miscellaneous facts which are related to your career objectives into your resume, such as your command of other language or languages. You must have seen that if you pick up any advertisement, you will see that one of the requirement section is that the candidate must be well versed with the written and spoken skills both in Urdu and English. So this is a prerequisite nowadays. So you must mention in your resumes your command of languages, your other than your mother tongue, your computer expertise. It's very important nowadays. We are towards a paperless revolution, and the date when you can start working, it can, in some cases, can also be included. Sometimes you also include some reference section. Reference section, normally we write that references are available upon request. It's better not to include the name of the referees. I mean, in reference section you can simply say that they will be provided when they are requested. Activities and achievement. This is another section that you include into your resume. Tell to your employer that you did what you did in your college, in your school, in your university. You were member of the debating club, you were member of the college 11, you were in the plays of the college, you did any community service out of your college, you were in the college union. All these activities tell the reader, your employer, that you are an active personality and you can work with people. This is a very strong point. Working with people is a very strong point. This is the quality that most of the employers are looking for. They want people who can adjust in the culture of their organization, who can work with others. So when you include this section into your resume, this gives a real picture of you to your employer, your prospective employer, that what type of a person you are. He does not only know your name, he also knows about you. He sees you through all these activities, that what type of a person you are and how will you be doing at the workplace. So include any information that you have. You might have been the editor of your college or school or university magazine, or you might have written any article to these these journals, or if you have been writing to any papers. So include any activity that you've been doing into your resume, whether academic or professional. So one thing that you must have to avoid when you are writing resume, and this thing is one of the strongest complaint of the employer against the employee, is lying. Most of the employer says that most of the resume has something of lying in it. The most frequent forms of deception include these things, such as claiming non-existent educational credits. I mean, you mention in your resume something of your education that you never had it. Inflating grade point average. You think that the employer is not going to check it, so you just, instead of telling your real GPA, you start telling some higher GPA, stretching dates of employment to cover gaps. In many cases, there come certain gaps into our history, employment history or academic history, because of certain reason we felt sick or something other happened. So most of the people try to hide these facts. So this is one type of deception. And against business ethics, we have gone through some of the business ethics, so you can understand that we have to be very careful not to do this thing. Similarly, claiming to be self-employed. Whenever you feel that you have a gap, you write something that you started some certain venture and it failed or it did not continue. Claiming to have worked for companies that are out of business. This is another reason that you sometimes give for any gap of employment or education. So avoid this deception. Omitting jobs that might cause embarrassment. I mean, this is another thing. Exaggerating expertise or experience. I mean, this is another type of deception that we need to be careful. So remember that when you are writing CVs, you have to avoid this aspect of deception. You don't have to claim what you are not. Never include any education that really doesn't exist. Never try to hide or conceal the facts, especially regarding the gaps in your employment or your academic career. So be very honest. Honesty is one of the key word in business communication, that if we want to have want to be treated fairly, we need to treat others fairly. So this is the basic principle in business communication. When you are sending information, other accept that piece of information on the basis of your honesty. If you lose your honesty, it means that the piece of information is in danger. The authenticity of the information is in danger. So in resume, avoid these things. Then come personal data. Personal data is sometimes included into resume and sometimes not. It is simply added into resumes to enhance the understanding of you with the employer. Experts also recommend excluding salary information, reason for leaving jobs, names of previous supervisor, etc. So these are some of the things that we have to know when we are to write resume. You have to go through all these sections. So when you are practically writing resume, you must write these sections separately, and then after you have written, think that which of the plan you are going to, organizational plan you are going to follow. Is it chronological or it is functional or a combination of the two? So here you come to the stage of revising your resume. So when you are to this stage, think of including you attitude into your resume. You attitude mean giving consideration to your reader. So whenever you have written it, you need to revise it. And when you are revising your resume, be very careful not to make it too long. There are certain problems with some resume that they have one fault or the other, and one of the fault is that a resume is very long. So avoid it. When you have written your resume, just go through it and you will see that you can omit or exclude a lot of information that is quite unnecessary. So be careful not to make your resume very long. Neither should they be very short or sketchy. They got to achieve a balance between the long and the short. Some of the resume are very hard to read, a lack of white space or devices such as indentation or boldface. Similarly, sometimes some resume are very wordy. I mean, you have used a lot of big words, pompous words, so there is verbosity into your resume. Sometimes they are very slick. Resume appears to have been written by someone other than the applicant. Sometimes they are very amateurish. The applicant appears to have little understanding of the business world. Similarly, sometimes they are very poorly produced. The print of the resume is very poorly produced. Sometimes there are a lot of misspellings or grammatical problems into your resume. So these resume must have all these things very correct into them. Sometimes people are very boastful, try to be very overconfident. They tell with what they in fact cannot do, or sometimes they are dishonest. They make claims of having certain expertise or work experience which actually they don't have. So these are some of the problems which you must avoid when you are writing a resume. You don't have to write very long or very short resume. You have to use certain writing devices. You have to use very simple language in a direct style. You don't have to use long sentences or a big vocabulary into it. You have to be very honest, no sign of dishonesty, and you don't have to exaggerate what you can do. So these are some of the pitfalls that you need to be careful of. When you have done all these things, we want you to have all these things that we have been discussing into different chunks once again. So when you are going to write resume, you should have to think of certain guidelines. We've been discussing all these guidelines, but we want them to revoice once again. So look at these, that when you are writing resume, be very careful about the organizational plan. You choose chronological approach unless you have a weak employment history. So if you have weak employment history, you use functional approach, and if you have a very strong employment history, use chronological approach. Use the combined approach to maximize the advantages of both the chronological and the functional types. So far as the format and style is concerned, use noun phrases and action verbs, use facts not opinion, adopt you attitude, omit personal pronouns, especially I, and I develop or I worked. Instead, worked and developed. Omit the date of preparation, desired salary and work schedule. Use parallelism when listing multiple items. Use positive language, simple words and write space. Give white spaces and use quality paper and quality printing. When you open your resume, include contact information, your name and address, include a career objective or a skill summary if desired. Make your career objective specific and interesting. Prepare 2 separate resume if you can perform 2 unrelated types of work. In a skills summary, present your strongest qualification first. So the opening is very important. You have to open your resume with your name, with your career objectives, your address, and especially so far as the career objectives are concerned, they must be specific. In case you have 2 careers, repeat them. Use 2 resume. When you come to education, list the name and location of every post secondary school that you have attended, any date of degrees and certificates that you obtained. Indicate your college major and minors. Indicate numerical scales for your GPA, etc. List the experience, seminar, workshop that you might have attended during your education. So far as work experience is concerned, list all relevant work experience, paid employment, volunteer work, internship, list full-time and part-time jobs, provide names and location of each employer with dates and of employment, list job title and describe responsibility, note on the job accomplishment and skills, etc. into your work experience. Similarly, activities and achievements, list of all the relevant offices and leadership positions that you might have held, list projects you have undertaken, show abilities such as writing or speaking, and list publication and community service that you might have taken up. List other information such as your proficiency in language other than English. Mention ability to operate special equipments, computer, etc., and certain softwares, etc. Personal detail or personal data. Omit personal details that might be seen as negative or used to discriminate against you. Leave personal interest off unless they are relevant to the position being sought. List a preference only with permission to do so. So, when you have written your resumes and going through all these guidelines that we have been discussing, you need to revise them very thoroughly. This is one very important aspect of the resume. When we write resume, we need to revise all these resumes. So, writing resume means that giving a picture of you to your prospective buyer. The paper of resume, in fact, gives a complete picture of you to the prospective employer. So, you have to write your resume very carefully. You have to determine your objectives, whether they are going to be specific or you want to do anything that is offered to you. That depends on you. If you have a very long employment history, obviously you will go for something very specific. But if you are just out of the college, you will like to embark upon anything that comes to you. So, be very careful about writing your objectives. What are you going to do in your life will depend on this. Then narrate your experience, explain your experience, discuss about you, about your qualification, about your work, about your achievements, about your skills in details. And we told you that you have to write everything about you. So in the previous lecture we discussed a lot about career planning, that what you should do when you are going to plan your career. So you see that all those things that you first jot down on a piece of paper are included into this resume. Obviously not everything, I mean, that is related to you and that can tell the prospective employer that what you can offer him. So how much your experience or your skills are related to the work that you intend to do or the work that the employer is offering you. So in the next lecture we will see that how a cover letter is written. Cover letter is another important aspect of this whole package. It's a persuasive in nature and very important, because in this letter we explain in more detail about ourselves, especially with reference to the job that we are looking for or we are targeting. So you'll see that how this letter is written, what approach we use, and then we'll discuss other things in the process of interview, understanding interview, preparing for interview, and then participating in interview or sitting in interview, and follow-up letter. So this is a complete circle. We start from the career planning and we end with the acceptance letter. This was all about writing resume. I hope that you must have learned something of writing resume. In this lecture, we'll show you some example of resumes so that you could write your own resume. But while writing resume, you have to follow all these steps, all these guidelines that we have discussed in detail. So today we finish our lecture here, and see you in the next lecture. Until Khuda Hafiz.